I'm Scott Miller, this is Carlos Canales, and I have a vision for the future of Nicaragua. On today's show, we're going to be talking about what I see as an opportunity for the country of Nicaragua to do things that no one else is doing. Nicaragua is poised in an amazing position to be able to take advantage of a future that is very different from the countries around it because it has had a very different past. When people first come to Nicaragua, they often struggle to put their finger on what is so different about it. But one of the most important things is a nearly complete lack of cars on the road. That's not to say that there aren't vehicles. There are, for sure. But it's completely different than all the countries around it, and all of them are completely different than North America. In the United States and Canada, you're used to seeing cars everywhere. They dominate the landscape. It's a completely different thing. Here in Nicaragua, as in most of Latin America, you notice a significant drop-off in the number of cars that are on the road. And compared to even its neighbors here in Central America, Nicaragua has many fewer cars, a small fraction of them, and it's noticeable in everyday life. The way that cities are laid out, the way that you interact with the country is very different. As you move around Nicaragua, you notice that people don't default to getting into cars. They default to taking taxis, getting on public transportation, or finding ways to get around on foot or on bicycle. The natural desire to just get in a car is not there because there just aren't cars. The reaction is different. With the new rising middle class, it's true that more and more Nicaraguans are beginning to think about getting cars. But one of the things they face is a constant problem of traffic and a lack of garage and parking space. People have to park mainly in old colonial cities. That's where the majority of the middle class exists currently, or in mountain towns, which have different logistical problems, or in Managua, which has a lot more space for cars because it is a more modern city. But even in Managua, you have heavy traffic and a general lack of parking for most places because using a car to get around as the default mode of transportation is a new thing, if it even exists yet in Nicaragua. And this gives us a huge opportunity to consider the future in a way that no other country in the region can do. Most countries today are trying to find ways to accommodate cars more and more. How do we make our roads wider? How do we create more parking? Do we create underground parking? This is what the new city in Guatemala City has done. They put the entire parking structure underneath the city, so there's no cars in the city itself, encouraging people to walk and take public transportation whenever possible, but still having a spot for their cars. Nicaragua doesn't have those cars to deal with currently, though, and that means things can be treated a bit differently. So what could a different future for Nicaragua look like? Unlike other countries in the region or most of the world, Nicaragua could make the move to discourage car ownership of individuals. There's few enough cars on the road today that phasing them out rather than phasing them in is a real possibility. The country is currently organized around public transportation with supplemental taxis and things like that to get last mile destinations. There's a lot of people riding around on tricyclos, which are human-powered bicycles, 3 wheels with a bench, and there's a lot of tuk-tuks and other campañeros, the really small motorized vehicles they use are very fuel efficient and able to squeeze through small areas. These are perfect for last mile destination when you don't want to walk there or you need to carry a lot of groceries, something of that nature. So Nicaragua already has this problem solved, unlike most countries that earlier adopted a lot of vehicles and had to adapt their country to those vehicles. And so you either have places like Guatemala, which have a major infrastructure challenge and they can't fit the cars that they have through the spaces that they have, or you have places like the United States where there's plenty of room for the vehicles, but the cities had to be designed around them and they are sprawling and create all kinds of urban problems. It is so windy that the wind blew my tripod over, and I'm on a full tripod. This is not like a portable like GoPro tripod. I have the Fuji on top of a real tripod and it still blew over. Didn't fall, it's okay. So Nicaragua currently is organized in such a way that it could handle public transportation for the majority of needs. In the 1990s, the railroad infrastructure of Nicaragua, like much of South America, was ripped out. But currently, a new rail line is going in from Managua to Granada, and there's a consideration of a new one going all the way to Chinandega in the port of Corinto. This means that massive, modern, new infrastructure could be coming to Nicaragua. And this is a really big deal because most places that have trains today, like the US and Canada, have to contend with a legacy infrastructure that's very hard to deal with. But countries like Costa Rica and Nicaragua are putting in brand new trains, replacing infrastructure that's no longer there. This gives them an opportunity to put in more modern trains that are more efficient and cheaper to operate, and to design them around the modern needs of the countries rather than being built on what the country needed 100 or 120 years ago. This is where Nicaragua has a real opportunity. Instead of expanding roads, which to some degree they still need to do, the Pacific Coast Highway makes a lot of sense. The new highway going to Puerto Cabeza makes a lot of sense. These are far-flung areas that need some way to move people around them, and there's not going to be major public transportation in those areas, or if there is, it's going to be by some form of ad hoc transportation, such as buses or shuttles or taxis. But there is remaining an opportunity everywhere in the country to focus instead on building parking lots and wider roads and bigger spaces between buildings, and instead focus on ways to look at modern or futuristic transportation and change the country to be built for what it will be rather than what it could have been in the past. By focusing on shared transportation and making it more and more difficult to own a personal vehicle, it's possible to heavily reduce the number of cars that are on the road, and in the future move towards automated vehicles. So things like self-driving cars are a known future for most of the world in the relatively near future. But if you plan around the traditional driving model, where people are driving themselves all the time, you're going to put lots of parking lots, you're going to have lots of parking garages, and you're going to need a lot of space in urban areas to accommodate vehicles that are sitting idle waiting for you. But if we encourage self-driving vehicles, even in just a planning stage today, we have an opportunity to make our cities denser and more attractive to human populations, while taking the cars that need to move them from place to place and allowing them to be stored outside of the city centers or outside of the cities completely, and allowing them to drive themselves in, get people as needed, and keep moving on to the next person wherever that person is, not requiring them to sit in front of whatever business someone is at currently, or when they need to sit only for a few minutes, making the need for urban space around vehicle storage dramatically less. This all makes for better safety, better traffic, and lower cost for the people who live here. Owning cars is a major expense, and Nicaragua is not a car manufacturing country. That means that every penny that goes into purchasing a car or repairing a car, at least the parts for that, flows outside of the country. That is not good for the economy. And fuel is not locally sourced here in Nicaragua either, as long as it is a petroleum product. Those things are all imports, and that is a major point of economic problems for Nicaragua instead of an opportunity. As a country that generates its own electricity, and a lot of it, and has a lot of potential to generate even more than it does, even without going nuclear. Pure green energy sources in Nicaragua are very abundant. It's one of the problems I'm having with filming today. Here, there's so much wind, but we also have so much wave and ocean power. We have geothermal power. We have hydroelectric in the mountains. We have a lot of opportunities for making power in a lot of wonderful green ways that allow us to power an electric infrastructure of transportation. And if we focus on moving vehicles from private ownership, which is less fuel efficient, to more shared public infrastructure, and we could even move this is a small country, so having a public infrastructure of self-driving cars is a very real possibility. It doesn't require a private company to come in and put that in. The government could put that in and make it like part of the bus system, which is already government run or subsidized one way or another, and use that to move people last mile. And that could easily interface with the public bus system so that it would know when buses were traveling, so it would take you to a bus at an appropriate time. It would alert the bus as to when you're coming. It would interface with the train system and do the same thing. The buses can talk to the trains. If you put these things together, Nicaragua, because it's small, it has a real opportunity to do this, and because it doesn't have all of the cars and car infrastructure to eliminate to make this possible, they could take this moment, seize the moment, and start backing off on car ownership, find ways to discourage car ownership today, and start moving away from that by raising fuel taxes, by raising car import taxes, by beginning cultural campaigns to look for public transportation, to look for shared transportation like taxis, and use these instead. Make sure there's price controls and price information about those things more in place than there is today, and start the infrastructure investing, which they absolutely are already, in things like trains and buses. Huge infrastructure investments in those areas have happened in the last 18 months. That continuing into the future combined with a push away from individual car ownership, and especially a push towards electric and self-driving vehicles. No vendor in particular, probably Chinese vendors because of the geopolitical and cost needs of the country, but those vendors exist. They're not ready for that today, but the planning can start today. In 5 years, it'll be ready to start implementing in some parts of the country. In 10 years, it'll be absolutely everywhere, and there'll be no need for people to drive themselves at all. We can eliminate all of the jobs and cost and dangers of people driving. We can eliminate all the people working with the system for licensure. We can eliminate all the needs for individual car ownership and car dealerships outside of the isolated cases that will still be needed. It'll actually work in the favor, so we can get buy-in from the current car dealership companies and importers, because they will move towards a lock on the market rather than having a lot of competition, because it is a somewhat shrinking market. But of course, there will still be an import market for the vehicles, for the shared transportation, and so those government contracts or large corporate contracts will replace the individual purchasing. And yes, the total number of vehicles will decrease, but the quality and the quantity of public ones will go up dramatically, and maybe not offset 100%, but offset very strongly. The lack of a pre-existing inventory of cars and car drivers on the market, a need for most people to go out and learn how to drive in order to use vehicles today, gives Nicaragua an opportunity that very few countries in the world have, that they have both the physical layout, the existing infrastructure, the cultural trends, and the simple opportunity in time to embrace a future of beautiful public transportation and grow that rather than growing individual car ownership. They could reduce the cost of transportation in Nicaragua while dramatically increasing profits at a national scale, GDP, making the country more efficient, making it easier for people to get to work wherever they need throughout the country, dramatically improving and encouraging tourism, making the country more of an ecological tourism center and a transportation tourism center. Having really amazing public transportation is a driving factor of bringing people in for tourism and making it easier to get around the country, to go to more places, encouraging people to stay longer, to pass through all of Nicaragua rather than visiting just single sites. These things can do wonders to bolster the economy and bring in whole new revenue streams that didn't exist previously. People will flock to the country, both tourists and expats, looking for a place that has wonderful public transportation. People love being able to take trains. Things like great public transportation are driving factors for people moving to Europe and why people are willing to spend more to live there. It's not the only factor, of course, but it is significant. And by doing a great job here with a good infrastructure, there's a bigger opportunity because Nicaragua lies in the very center of Central America. This is a region where good public transportation could exist between these countries. There's a large potential cooperative zone who has a very large shared interest in a strong economy across the region. From Panama in the southeast to Guatemala in the northwest, there is a long, nearly linear chain of countries, with the obvious exception of El Salvador and Honduras sitting side by side, that with relatively simple rail lines, the entire region could be linked together, and then individual countries could create a spider web of additional transportation opportunities within their own countries or offload to traditional infrastructure like cars as needed. But with Nicaragua in the center, it could be a showpiece. It could be the most advanced country in the region very quickly. Already so much infrastructure investment in Nicaragua in areas like fiber optic internet and high quality roads exist today. It is part of the culture and part of the current momentum of Nicaragua to move in this direction, to move in making a dream country of the future, kind of like an experimental prototype city of tomorrow, Disney's Epcot. Much of the things that they did, Nicaragua is actually poised to do, and that may seem incredibly non-obvious when you're looking at it from a outside perspective, where you hear about a lack of economy, where it's very poor, where it must be a very rural country, and it is in many ways, but it is also a country that understands public investment. It is a country that is absolutely doubling down on infrastructure. It is a country that totally believes in the importance in public works and doing good for the general population. It is a country that understands that putting its money into imported products does not make sense, and it wants to do the right thing for the people. You can see this in the new baseball stadiums going up all over the country. You can see this in new public parks absolutely everywhere. You can see this in the new hospitals in Wee Willie here in Leon, the giant new hospitals, in new highways connecting remote regions of the country. This is a country that understands the importance of these things, and taking that and adding modern technology, adding a forward-looking idealism towards what we know is coming, what we know is just around the corner, what we know can happen, and combining that with the existing, absolutely recent addition of investment in railroad once again here in Nicaragua, take that to the next logical step. What can we do with that? We can connect Nicaragua in a public transportation way and take cars off the road and make this place safer, cheaper, and more of an economic powerhouse than it has ever been in the past. And while that is not the only factor that would drive those things, it can be a really significant factor in making the country internally more efficient, making transportation the safest in the world, and making the tourism economy a giant draw through many different channels that are enabled and made possible through this system. And I just want to add, if I was to do this, if I was to have a hand in designing how this would work, I would say absolutely something that Nicaragua needs in this vein is a series of railroad stations throughout the country, much like they have in Europe, but modern, because we don't have a legacy of traditional stations to work with here, so there's no reason to copy another country. We can make really beautiful, modern, architectural masterpieces that are full of restaurants and shopping and cafes and things like that, just like they do in Europe, things that are often missed in the US. It exists in the US, but it's few and far between. And many of the places that used to have it, such as the Utica, New York train station, really don't have it anymore, but you can see the legacy of what was there. But in Europe, they still have this, and doing that in Nicaragua could grow the places that we have for really beautiful public spaces, for third-party spaces in such a great way. So I'm really excited about the possibility of where Nicaragua can go, and this is my vision of the direction they should head to be not just a leader in the region, but a global leader in what a modern cultural landscape could look like, what city planning on a national scale could be. Because Nicaragua is a country on a city scale. At just under 7 or just over 7 million people in the population, we can behave much like a singular city. And if we think in that way, what if we wanted to be the very, very ecologically sound, very economically advanced, very modern but in touch with nature, low environmental impact, high safety for our populace country? We have the opportunity to do that, and we have the opportunity to start making it happen today. That is my vision for the future of Nicaragua. I've been thinking about that for years, and my ultimate dream is a high-speed train line that goes from Panama City to Mexico City and absolutely combine, or even farther on into the north of Mexico, and creating a completely regional, connected region, much like Europe has. But we only need one train line with a single branch in El Salvador to completely connect the region and make for high-speed, absolutely beautiful transportation, logistics, and economic cooperation throughout the region. Of course, we already cooperate economically, but we could take that to a level that is so different. And of course, finding ways to move towards a free trade and free border zone between all those countries would be very difficult. We have a lot of challenges for that, but those are things we can head towards. And currently, we see Costa Rica really poised to be in a position to work with Nicaragua on that. We see El Salvador absolutely moving into a position to be a global partner with Nicaragua in leading this region. They have some unbelievable ideas for the future that they are hoping to implement there. We see them as, at this point, much like a younger sibling who is coming along and taking after their older sibling. We see some great things happening up there. Honduras, Guatemala, they're definitely making moves in the right direction. It seems there's a lot of things we don't know, but we have some really big opportunities for the region, really exciting things potentially happening both at a country scale, but also at a grander region scale, 7 or 8, 9 countries that could be cooperating together and creating a powerhouse region very easily with just a little bit of forward thinking and cooperation. I'm hoping you guys enjoyed the video today. I changed the format quite a bit. We're on the Fujifilm. I'm out in a field. This is very difficult to film like this, and I'm doing this alone. I wanted to try some new techniques, and the wind is outrageously heavy today, so I hope that wasn't too much of a problem. I am attempting to take us to another level on the show. I really want to put more effort into this whenever possible because we really are becoming a major show. And I discovered this week, really compared to a lot of shows that I've been watching for a long time and thought were really, really big shows, that we're actually catching up with or have already passed many YouTubers that I thought were really major voices, and not Nicaraguan shows, but American and Canadian shows that are general purpose, that we're doing this from Nicaragua, about Nicaragua, primarily about Nicaragua, is a really big deal, that we're putting YouTube on the map in a country where it's basically been unheard of for a long time. Not that it's unheard of, but it's not been that big. This is a really new thing that we have kind of happening here, and I didn't realize until I was really digging into some metrics of some fairly big shows, and I was actually reached out to directly by a sponsor, like a real sponsor, not one of those like sent you an email things. This was an actual enterprise vendor in the United States that I know. I didn't know the people there personally, but I knew the vendor very well. I've done business with them for a long time as a customer, and they reached out and said, "Wow, we'd really be interested in having a conversation because we agreed it is someone that I have recommended on the channel before with no connection to them, and they feel that the content here makes a lot of sense, and a lot of their management is not here in Nicaragua, but is here in the region, and they are existing partners with a large vendor in Managua, so they have a lot of ties to Nicaragua, even though they're a Canadian company. I think I said American. They're a Canadian company. So that kind of triggered me to look into some things and realized we are very far in front of 1 million views per year at this point. You guys are making all this possible. I did a show just yesterday about how I'm not giving up on YouTube, even though everyone else seems to be. I don't know what that's about, but I didn't really do a show on saying thank you to all of my viewers, and I want to make a special show of that, but I want to say it today. That, obviously I'm not making this happen. I'm putting the content on YouTube, so I'm giving it some amount of opportunity to happen, but you guys are the ones making this happen. You come out and you watch the show and you hit like and you share it and you do whatever it is you do, and you're making this show happen on a scale that I didn't actually really realize was happening, mostly because YouTube doesn't monetize very well. If you're ever wondering, you don't make money from YouTube. You can make money through other things that happen because of your YouTube, for sure. I haven't done that yet. Maybe that'll happen. That would be great. But it's really that because the monetization is so trivial that, and I've never gotten a check from YouTube. I have some money stored up that they owe me, but not enough to ever have them cut me a check. So that's how little it is over the entire life of the channel, right? But over all my channels, I've never had them cut me a check. But that has kind of hidden from me the impact that we're having, the reach that we have, and it's thanks to you guys. You guys come out every day and watch the show. You guys are out there promoting it. You're out there showing the love and going in the comments and leaving your questions and leaving your comments and leaving your feedback. And that's so fantastic. And you hear about all these channels that never get that kind of interaction, and we have it every single day on every single video. There's nothing I can say but thank you. You guys are the ones making this happen. This is our community, and I'm just really thankful to get to be kind of the talking head of our little community here. And also let me know what you think of the way that the show looks today. Just all that feedback, scroll down there and let me know. And if you'd like to support our channel here, you can buy me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/ScottAllenMiller. And if you could do the things, right? Share, like, tell people. Absolutely awesome. We're filmed today on the Fujifilm X-S20. This is the Fujinon 18-55. We are in nostalgic Neg. I am in Carlos Canales, which is absolutely beautiful. I'm staring at gorgeous volcanoes. It is 98 degrees today. It's 36 Celsius, and the sun is brutal. I have sunglasses on. I have a polarizer on the camera. I am dying out here. The breeze is actually keeping me pretty comfortable. I'm not actually sweating. Look, there's no sweat. There's nothing, right? And I am in the shade, but the wind has made it that it's actually comfortable out here until I step a few feet over there into that sun. Let me just, see this? That's not fun. I have to walk through all of that to get back. I've got miles to hike carrying all this gear, but thank you so much for joining me. I will see all of you tomorrow.